Okay, thank you very much. Oh, Grant, did you want to say something about this?
Anyway, yeah, just so people can see, this is a case file of Norm Minetta's mother. She was a picture bride who came to Angel Island. We recently discovered it, and I don't think Norm had even seen it. So I just wanted to throw that in there as an example. Sometimes there are some Japanese American files. And Angel Island was also a temporary detention center during World War II for a number of Japanese who were arrested by the FBI right after Pearl Harbor. 600 from Hawaii and 100 from the mainland.
Okay, thank you so much. Maria talked about displacement because of war between countries, and I will be talking today about displacement of Japanese Americans during World War II within their own country. And the reason I called this I Am Not a Number is because I'll be talking about Japanese American nameplates which people carved by hand to identify themselves and their barracks when they were incarcerated during World War II. And this is one example. He's inserted a little bit of humor in that. Whoops.
Sorry.
Oh, is that a word? Well, it doesn't matter. It's okay. On March 5th, the New York Times had a newspaper article about an auction of Japanese American items made behind barbed wire during World War II. And I happened to see the newspaper article and said, oh, prison art, is this valuable? The kinds of things that people made, such as, there was no furniture in the barracks. This is a little donation box. These are cigarette containers woven out of onion bag strings. These are little ornaments made of shells, and this is actually a watercolor made by a teenager in Tule Lake. The person who collected them is named Alan Eaton, and he was actually 67 years old, and he was very interested in crafts and immigrant art. And at the time of the camps, he thought that he would like to have an exhibition of the kind of these crafts and artwork, so he went around the camps and collected them. And he wanted to hold an exhibition, which was never held, but he did say in a book that he wrote several years later, people offered to give me things to the point of embarrassment, but not to sell them. And so many of us as Japanese Americans felt that it was unethical to sell things to the highest bidder in a public auction when they had been given to the original donor who had long passed away. And also the fact that these were made by people who were imprisoned with no legal charges and no trials made people very upset. We started a campaign. So this is a picture of one of the camps where Japanese Americans were held, and the whole sort of swath of the West Coast was designated a military zone, and 120,000 Japanese Americans were held in barbed wire prison camps during World War II with no charge, no trial. There was never a single case of sabotage ever found. There were 10 permanent camps in 7 states. Arkansas, you can see them colored there, is the furthest east. This is wrong. It's not half were women and children. Half of the people who were imprisoned were children. Another 25% were women. So 75% of the incarcerees were women and children. 2/3 were U.S. citizens. And the picture on the left shows, in the upper left shows Mike Honda, who is the U.S. congressman from San Jose, and the right-hand side shows him when he was 4 years old in Amachi, Colorado. So that's just a little background to lead into these nameplates. And the auction was going to be held in New Jersey by the Rago Auction House. They had 450 objects divided into 34 lots. And among the lots were photographs, and this photograph shows a nameplate, Kei Ideta, and a handmade mailbox. This one had, the photographs had an estimate of $1,200. I think what's really interesting about these nameplates is that, number one, they're a valuable resource for family research because you can look up the name and attach it to records. The government made final accountability reports of every single man, woman, and child in the camps. And if you look at those final accountability reports for the 10 camps, you can find names of everybody in the family, their ages, their birth dates, where they were born, where they were moved from, and where they were released from. And once you have that basic data, you can then start finding birth certificates, military records, immigration records, and all kinds of things using Ancestry.com. And I'd like to give credit to my husband, Jim Russell, who's sitting right there, who really is the genealogical researcher in the family. I think it's important, too, to think about these name tags. It was very poignant to see the hand-carved poetry in the building next door where people had carved into the walls because they were expressing their sadness, their depression, their trauma being held here for so long. And I think in a similar way, these nameplates are an assertion of identity. And when people went to camps, they were assigned numbers, 5-digit numbers. And you can see in this very famous Dorothea Lange photograph, this is the Mochida family from Hayward, and the children are wearing their family number around their neck, like baggage. And a very famous document about this period was written by a Berkeley artist named Mine Okubo, titled Citizen 13660, which points out the irony and the tragedy of being a U.S. citizen but being held without trial with that family number. So I think the nameplates can be thought of a way to recover your humanity or individuality. And this is a really fine example of Mr. T. Awase, which was also, the photograph was for sale in the auction. There were 37 nameplates up for auction, and one of the reasons to protest it, and I was among the people who started a Facebook page to protest the holding of the auction, because we felt that some of these objects were definitely things that could be traced to descendants who might want to claim them. And particularly with the nameplates, they have names, some in Japanese, some in English, but research could be done, and it seemed too hasty to sell them. And this is another example of a lot. The one that I circled is one that we traced the genealogy for, I should say, my husband did. This is in carved relief, and the man's name was Haruyuki Henry Yoshi. We found that he was born on April 14, 1917 in Watsonville, California, so he was an American citizen. This is his, once his family was identified in the camp records, all kinds of things like yearbooks, which are online, were found. And he was a very high-achieving high school student. He was in the scholarship, vice president of the Spanish Club, Latin Club, Rally Committee yearbook. In the 1940 census, so just a year before Pearl Harbor, this record shows that Henry is the son, male, Japanese, age 22, born in California. His sister was born in California. Mother is a widow. She's born in Japan. And then 2 years later, the family was removed from their Watsonville, California home, and they were sent to a temporary detention center in Santa Anita where there was a racetrack which was converted into temporary barracks. And then eventually they went to their permanent camp in Colorado where they lived where they were incarcerated for 2 years behind barbed wire. Eventually, he was released to Cleveland, Ohio. And this picture here was with his obituary, and it said, he served in World War II as a CID investigator, Criminal Investigation Department, for the U.S. Army in Japan, where he met his wife Toshie, and honorably discharged as second lieutenant. Henry loved to fish and golf, and realized one of his dreams when he had a hole-in-one at the Thunderbird Golf Club. He worked very hard all his life as a landscaper. This is the certificate of witness to his marriage. While he was in Japan with the Army, he met his future wife, Toshie, and they were married in Yokohama at the American Consular Office. So these documents were found online. Is this through Ancestry, Jim? Yeah. This is another nameplate, and this one wasn't one of the auction items. However, it shows you how you can be walking in a museum and see something that might have genealogical and family history interest. This comes from the MIS Museum at Crissy Field, MIS being the Military Intelligence Service, where many Japanese Americans did translation, interpretation, and language work to help the war effort. And it's part of the National Japanese American Historical Society's facilities. At any rate, they had a case here, and there was a nameplate. So this is J. Koga, and what makes this particular nameplate so interesting to people in family history and Japanese American history is, unlike many others, this one has the names of the 3 concentration camps where he was held. Tanforan, which is in San Bruno, which was a temporary holding facility. Topaz, which was the permanent camp in Utah. And then Tule Lake, which was a segregation maximum security camp sent for people who were thought to be disloyal were sent. And so doing some of the family history work, we found that his name was J. Once you can find out where he was, it was clear that this was Jungo Koga. He was born in Japan. At the age of 19, he arrived from Japan into the United States, but into Southern California, so not through Angel Island. He got his World War I draft card in Los Angeles, and then he went to, he moved up to the San Mateo area, we think, and went from San Mateo to the Tanforan racetrack in 1942. He was there for 5 months, was in Topaz in Utah, the Utah desert, for a year, and then after that was sent to Tule Lake with his son. And Tule Lake was a segregation facility where Japanese Americans who were considered disloyal because of a questionnaire, which I won't go into right now, were sent to. And that had 24-hour military guards. They all had military guards armed, but Tule Lake was a very...
We can move over.
Okay. Yeah. He was at Tule Lake with his son. And what's the unanswered questions about Junko Koga's family is he went with his son, who was born in the United States, and I don't have a picture here, but his son went with him to Tule Lake, so they went to this sort of segregated camp on the border of Oregon. Okay. Right. That's all right. I'll just end this up very briefly. What happens is the son ends up going to Bismarck, North Dakota. The son ends up going to North Dakota, and apparently he renounced his citizenship and might have been sent to Japan. A certain number. Oh, let's not do this. Some people just said, I'm giving up on the United States, I'm an American citizen, I haven't committed a crime, I'm going to Japan. So the records kind of end in North Dakota, and we're going to continue to research the Koga family. Mr. Koga, however, stayed behind, and until 1952, Japanese immigrants were not allowed to become citizens because they were Asian. So this is Mr. Koga's citizenship card. And that's the end.